Morning. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission Individual Advancement Program Fiscal Year 2020 Music 2 Advisory Review Panel. I'm Jen Perry from Terre Haute, Commissioner, and today is April 17th. We are meeting by conference call and streaming live from a webinar. We welcome all applicants who may be listening in today and would like to remind you that you are muted for this review. There is no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation and disposition of applications before, during, or after the panel meeting. At this time, I'd like the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, please, stating their name, occupation, and where they are from the state. I'll call out your name. Patrick.
Hi, Patrick Stoffer. I live in Muncie, Indiana. I'm the coordinator of music promotional services at Ball State and a freelance trombonist as well.
Okay. Philip.
Hi, Philip Foyles. I live in Columbus. I am currently a public school math teacher that I came upon after moving to Indiana. I'm I guess a part-time musician. I've done it more as a sort of an amateur occupation, but I do still record and produce work regularly.
Okay. Nick Gonzalez. Nick, are you there? We'll come back to you at the end. We'll move on to Joshua Thompson.
Good morning. My name is Joshua Thompson. I'm based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm a classical pianist who focuses on the masterworks of composers of African descent. I'm also a grant writer and sit on the board of directors for Arts for Lawrence here in Indianapolis.
Okay. Nick Blanford.
Hi, my name is Nick Blanford. I'm the managing director for Secretly Group, a group of record labels based in Bloomington, Indiana. I'm also a member of the Bloomington Arts Commission.
Anna?
Anna Tragister, artist and community services manager of the Indiana Arts Commission.
And do we find you, Nick?
Okay. Nick's on the phone with Chapin, working on the audio.
Yep, no problem. We'll go ahead and keep moving. We will now begin panel review, and this is how the process is going to work. I'll announce the application and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and perspective. Panelists, please note that the applications do not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I'll ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We are not looking for consensus here, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives panelists bring to the table. After the second reader has finished, I'll open the discussion for any final comments. Remember, in the interest of time, we are only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, that panelist will be placed on hold while the application is reviewed. However, there are no conflicts of interest on this panel today. And finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of this broader discussion. These scores save automatically. If there are no questions, we will begin. All right, the first one, and kind of give me a look up and give me a heads up when you're ready to move on too. That's helpful for me. We'll start with the application from Joseph Rauen. I apologize if I've butchered that name there. First reader is Patrick.
All right, so on this application, I'll just kind of go through my comments for each of the criteria areas. I was really impressed with how specific the applicant was on how this project was going to be different than ones that he's done in the past. And I thought he was very insightful as far as how this was going to actually help him in his current career stage and help move him forward as an artist. I thought the submitted documentation as far as his previous work and his current artistic output, I was really impressed by what they submitted. And I thought that the application was incredibly well written with a significant amount of detail throughout. Specifically in regards to the budget, it was a very detailed budget with very specific amounts listed for the entire project. And I just felt that it was very well thought out and very well put together. On the public benefit and community engagement side, I really appreciated his level of commitment to the community engagement portion of this project. I felt that he was able to, he clearly defined his audience and was able to outline his specific plans to engage with them. And like I said, as far as the budget was concerned, I felt like it was a very well structured budget, and he really didn't leave a whole lot to be desired from within the application. So those are my thoughts.
All right, thank you. And second reader on this one is Joshua.
Pretty much agree with everything that Patrick was saying. With a little bit more detail, I thought the supporting documentation really bolstered the strength of this application in the sense of providing mock-ups and visuals so we could actually get a clearer understanding of what this project is. And then also on the public benefit and community engagement, I really appreciated how this applicant presented things where that this engagement piece goes far beyond any performance. Specifically for the diversity in the audiences that he is trying and will engage, hitting with rural and urban and people who are differently abled. Like I said, the supporting documentation was just fantastic.
Great, thank you, Joshua. Are there any new, additional, or opposing comments on this application? Okay. Hearing none, I will give you guys just a moment to update your scores, update your online comments. I'll give you just a moment here. Okay, looks like most are done. Pull up the next application if you'd like. And the next applicant is Karri York. Have it pulled up. Okay, first reader, Philip.
All right, there we go. I think I'm in now. So this application had quite a bit of detail on what the artist hopes to accomplish, and I think it was pretty clear that while this goal was there, that they know what it takes to reach the goal, especially as far as the coaching involved. And so I think that, the artist plan is pretty well laid out. And I liked the amount of detail in the application. And I think that the impact on the artist's career, I think that the solo recital aspect is always impactful in preparation and delivering. I mean, it's kind of what music's all about. So I liked the details there. The one area of improvement that I saw was there was a specific line. I guess I'll go into the community engagement piece. I think it was the public benefit for this type of recital, especially operatic works that may not be as often performed, is clear, but the engagement piece, I think, was kind of vague, was vaguely described. I think that it would benefit this artist to have a little more detail in what the two-way engagement is going to be. I don't remember the specific comments, but I did see it was slightly vague, and I wanted more detail on that community engagement piece. The other area of improvement was, for any artist, having a coach or a mentor, someone to help train and prep for the recital is obviously beneficial. I think that the line item that was given was not clearly tied to a specific coach. So I think that on the application, it was helpful for me to see, all right, this artist has already contacted the coach and has already sort of made that contact. You know, I'm sure this artist has plenty of contacts and plenty of coaches that they have in mind. I'd like to see that more specifically laid out in the application. So I think the line item for the amount of the vocal coach was unspecific. So I wanted to see a little more specificity there. Otherwise, I think that's the bulk of my comments.
Great, thank you very much. Do we get Nick Gonzalez back on? Nick, I've got you down for second reader.
Cool. So I agree with a lot of what Philip said. My main concern also was with the community engagement and public benefit part. I like that she said she was going to go talk to different groups, but it would be helpful to know, like, you know, if you're talking to adults and children, you want to have a community engagement part that's specific to each group. It's not always feasible to have that two-way conversation. You know, depends on your age group. The only part I think I disagreed on was the impact on the artist's career, just because I think I'm not 100% sure how this type of training differs from the education she's had in the past. I think there is benefit to having the coach. I just didn't really see how it takes her to the next step in her career stage.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, are there any new, additional, or opposing comments to Philip or Nick?
Yes, I have some.
Okay, go ahead.
So for me, just kind of piggybacking on what Nick was talking about, yeah, I just had a concern that she just gave a recital, she said, similar to this last year. And so again, I would have just appreciated the applicant being more specific as far as her plans for this recital, you know, possible repertoire ideas. Yeah, just how is this going to be different and how is this going to move her forward? And it kind of ties into another concern I had was with kind of the feasibility aspect and the feasibility section of the criteria. Timeline-wise, I was a little concerned that she hadn't planned for enough rehearsal time. So for her last recital, she said that she had, you know, a full year of preparation with a vocal coach and 500 hours of personal practice. And so I was concerned that you know, having September, October be the recital time was just not going to be enough time. And so she wasn't, in my opinion, the applicant wasn't clear enough as far as her preparation that was going to be needed. So, and just in general, again, talking about the feasibility, I would have appreciated just a little bit more detail, thinking about potential performance spaces. I know she kind of gave broad categories of churches or universities that she perhaps teaches at, but I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more thought gone into identifying a specific place and, you know, perhaps a specific recital program as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Patrick. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Just a very quick, to kind of piggyback when it comes to the public benefit and community engagement. I feel like the application might have been a bit stronger if the applicant had intentionally stated that they were intending to use a facilitator for the talkback. I think that would definitely help lead and guide the conversation amongst an audience who might be intimidated or not know what questions to ask. So that way the applicant is ensured that there is a robust conversation, measurables and intended impacts are actually hit in a very deliberate and targeted manner for whatever audience that she's planning on performing in front of.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Sure. Sorry, I just wanted to follow up. I mean, as far as the quality of the artist's work, clearly a very gifted singer and a strong background in performing operatic works. So, and I just wanted to applaud her for wanting to do that. So,
Agreed.
I'll agree with that. Quality was there.
Yeah, great. Okay, go ahead and update your scores based on our robust discussion here, and update any comments that you might have. And then let's I'm gonna ask you to go ahead and pull up the next one when you complete that.
Just a heads up, Nick's Zoom is against the Knicks today. So Nick Blanford is working on calling in.
Okay.
And so he's the first reader on this next one. So we'll actually just have Patrick, if you could just serve as first reader, and then when Nick joins us, sound okay?
Okay. So the next one, Ragusa. And if everyone could pull that one up. And we're just going to flip it. And Patrick, when you're ready, go ahead and take first reader position for us.
all right. So on this application, within the impact on the artist career development criteria section, I really would have liked to have seen a more clearly defined project. I was having a hard time understanding what exactly the project was going to entail. Obviously, she's purchasing this flute d'Amour, and but I wasn't quite sure if that was the extent of the project. Certainly, looking at the budget, going down to the feasibility aspect of it, that was all that was included in the budget. So I didn't know if that was, supposed to be the project, or if the other things that she identified, such as, the recording project, performances, and things of those natures, were the true project here. I would have liked to have seen it a little bit more clearly defined as far as what her actual project was, and then supported throughout the application, especially in the budget section. Going down to feasibility, the budget left a lot to be desired. And then also inside of feasibility, it was really concerned with the timeline element. There seemed to be references to the fact that she's already kind of commissioned this flute. And if that's the case, I just want to make sure that, whatever she's proposing as far as her actual project is concerned is going to be able to take place inside of the grant period of this upcoming year. So I just had a lot of concerns there. But going to the quality of the artist's work, obviously a very strong player. Her artistic documentation was really nice, and her resume is very strong. And I have no doubt that she would be able to do great things with this new flute d'Amour. I just would have liked a little bit more specificity as far as what she's actually planning to do, and then have the rest of the application support that proposed project. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Did we get Nick Blanford back?
Yes, I am back.
Wonderful. Can you take the reader?
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what was said there. I'm maybe not as concerned about some of the lack of specifics as far as when events would happen and that sort of thing. I think that what she's proposing is achievable within the time frame. But I think the plan for community engagement was fairly strong. I think the one additional thing I would encourage is, since she's talking about performances and demonstrations and talkbacks with different audiences, since this is a very rare historic instrument, I do think there's some work that could be done to make sure that there's some connection to other contemporary, more accessible instruments. So that it's not just a historical demonstration, but it's actually connecting people to opportunities that they're going to be a little bit more accessible to them. And that would just magnify the benefit and engagement. But I think that's all I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Do we have any new, additional, or opposing comments? Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and finalize scores based on our discussion today and update your online comments. Give you just a moment to do that. And when you're complete, go ahead and pull up the next application for Adisa. Again, apologies if I'm doing a poor job with names. And we've got a first reader of Joshua Thompson. Joshua, are you ready to read?
I sure am.
All right, let's go for it.
I'm just going to go through, I guess, each category. So when it comes to artistic career development, applicant definitely has a history as a hip-hop artist, looks like for about 16 years. And what I enjoyed about this one was using that as kind of like a recommitment, future commitment to using his artwork as a tool for relevant and meaningful community building. For me, that was the part that was that set this one apart, I believe. He's very clear and very intentional as to what he wants his music to do, specific to his community. So the quality of the artist's work, we've seen it. I think it stands for itself. I enjoy how he is mixing that filming, that editing, that mastering, in addition to writing lyrics and performing them himself. The community engagement piece I felt like was very, very strong. I enjoy how he's got a very targeted strategy for not just how he's going to reach his audience, but he's very specific as far as who he wants his audience to be. It's not just anybody. It's very specific, and he speaks very clearly about why that targeted demographic is there, but also has plans here to engage those people in a series of forums that is unintimidating, is casual yet purposeful. And so I did appreciate that one. I felt that one was a little bit more measurable. The size of the audience that he's going to reach, I feel like makes it possible for a stronger two-way type of correspondence and type of communication between his intended audience and the message in his work. So overall, those were the standout points for me.
Great. Thank you, Joshua. Second reader, Philip, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. I think that the artist clearly has a history of producing work and would like to continue that. And I really hope the artist does. And I think that as far as the impact on the career, I think, continuing to produce work is impactful. And I think that what can be achieved beyond that, I'm not sure was clearly described. I didn't see beyond producing the album. I think, I didn't see what the artist hoped the impact would be beyond that. I know that as far as the engagement in the community and the impact was there, and so I know that that's a part of it. As far as so the quality of the work was very clearly there. There's a clear line of progression through the artist's work and career, and so I think that this project is another piece in there. I'd actually disagree with the community engagement piece that Patrick gave. I think that once again, I guess I'm looking for more specific outline of how this two-way engagement will happen. I saw comments such as an ongoing and active community engagement. That's the hope, as well as the listening parties to serve as a conversation starter. And so I think that maybe having that more clearly outlined, like how that conversation starter will take place, whether it's a facilitator in that dialogue to help the artist engage in that conversation. So I think that would be helpful. There has been ongoing and active community engagement, but I don't know where. I know there's an institute described, but I don't know if those are actively going on. And if so, if there is active engagement, we should know about that because I think that would be really beneficial to know. Otherwise, I think, the quality is definitely there. One more quick comment. I felt like the hope in the mixing and mastering and filming a video and marketing and PR and all of that was described, but I felt like a lot of that is going to need a little bit more of a budget. I don't know how all of that combined into one project can be achieved with this budget. And so I think that maybe paring that down a little bit and really looking at recording and mixing and mastering can be more of a focus, and the filming and video and the marketing and the PR, while a necessary aspect of getting the album out there, I think can be included in, maybe a different project, or I felt like it was beyond the scope of this budget. But otherwise, really great work.
Okay, great. Thanks, Philip. Do we have any new, additional, or opposing comments to the ones provided by Joshua or Philip?
I have a question, an additional question that was raised by Phil. Were we supposed to, or is it appropriate if we actually were to look up some of the maybe more background information from the applicant, specifically with the institute that the applicant referred to? Were we allowed to do other research on that to kind of help bring things into focus, or no?
You should only be scoring based on what's in the application.
Okay. So looking at saying, they state the institute, and I'm like, okay, so what is that? And I go and I look up to see what it is that's not allowed, just only what's in the application.
Yeah.
Okay.
The information, you should have all information that you should be basing your review on should be in the application. So
okay.
Yeah, try to keep out any outside information out of this process. You're bringing, by nature, all of you are bringing in contextual information into every part of this, so that you can't filter out all of that. But if you had to go and find outside information, I'd say don't let that be part of your scoring.
Okay, then I will retract my comment.
I think for me,
okay, sorry.
I'll go ahead. I think for me, I was less concerned than Philip than on the community engagement piece. I think I'm going to take the applicant at their word and just saying that they're going to host 3 to 5 of those public album listening and discussion sessions. Yes, perhaps some greater detail could have been included there just so we could have a stronger sense as to what that might look like. But I think, as Joshua stated, I was just really impressed with him identifying his key audience that he wanted to engage there. And I think that should be applauded. One thing that I did want to mention, if I can find it, and maybe this is just my concern as not being a hip hop artist, but I was a little concerned with the timeline as far as the writing of the tracks. I was just a little concerned that it was a pretty tight timeline as far as what the writing of the music was going to be like, and then recording that music. But again, perhaps that is, that was just a concern of mine, that it seemed like a pretty tight timeline to write and record within the time given. But yeah, that's what I had.
I think there was another. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Nick Blanford. Yeah, I was a little less concerned about the timeline and the budget. I actually think both are fully achievable. You know, I guess working in the recorded music industry and working with a lot of independent artists, there wasn't anything that I paused at there. You know, I think particularly since there's reference to, you know, like the video director and previous collaborators, you know, so I think that the costs that are expressed, I don't have any issue with. And, you know, I'll just say I can only speak from my own experience, but, you know, I was familiar with the Institute mentioned. I do wish that there was more detail and context given there, because it's very possible, especially outside of Indianapolis, a lot of folks would be unfamiliar with it. But from what I know of that organization, I actually think it provides like a pretty good foundation for cultivating the audience in question. You know, I think the one thing I would have liked to see a little bit more of is, since there was reference to sort of some big concepts like social entrepreneurship and self-determination and communal living, while those are all pretty positive concepts, I would have liked to see it drilled down just in a little bit more detail, you know, of how those would be discussed. But all in all, I thought the application was very strong.
Okay, good discussion. Anyone else? Are we ready to update our scores and comments? Okay. When you finish your updates, let's go ahead and pull up the next application, which I have down as Michael Drew's. Can you get that pulled up? All right, I've got Nick Gonzalez as first reader on this one. Nick, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep, you can hear me? Cool. So I thought the artistic quality and like the background of the artist was really good. The artist has a long career in making their own electronic compositions. So I have no doubt like the artist will, if funded, could do the work that they describe. I had two areas of concern. One was in the feasibility and their timeline. In their timeline, they said that they were going to rehearse in the last month, but also give performances in the last month. So I guess that my concern is if they're rehearsing and giving performances in that same month, because it's not as clear, I would be a little worried on actually having everything done by that point to give good quality performances. The other area of concern that I had that I think could make this application better is the community engagement part. It didn't really seem like there was a lot of two-way dialogue. It was more, it came across more as like a presentation of his work. I thought having like, you know, free public events and online streaming was fine, but trying to find that next level of what is that two-way dialogue and meaningful engagement that the artist could have with audiences. I felt like there wasn't much there, and if there is stuff there, it wasn't really described.
Sorry, I had to go off mute. Thank you, Nick. Second reader, the other Nick Blanford.
Yeah, I thought this was, I agree. I thought it was a very strong application. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my notes to refresh here. You know, I thought that the one thing that sort of jumped out at me here, since the artist is also a professor, I was sort of waiting while reading the application to discuss a clearer teaching moment. I think the art is of high quality. I think the plan to engage the community through performance and the type of spaces that would be used to engage different audiences was great. But I thought there was a really clear opportunity to incorporate either a demonstration or an explanation of process and the technology, particularly because that's what's so unique about the artistry. And while this may not be sort of natural in a traditional music venue, I thought if you're doing performances in art spaces or libraries, having more of a Q&A, some sort of demonstration like that to really hone in on that two-way exchange was really the main thing that would just elevate this further. But I think that's a really easy opportunity, particularly with the artist background. But otherwise, I thought this was really strong.
Thank you, Nick. Are there any new, additional, or opposing comments on this one?
I just had one when it came to the community engagement piece and the public benefit. I will say the documentation and the actual video that was provided went a very long way in helping to clarify in my mind exactly what the applicant's art form is. So I thought that was helpful. But since the applicant has done similar projects or used the same mediums, I think he could have helped bridge the gap between showing that two-way if he used and explained just briefly how previous presentations of this concept using an integration of music, images, and technology, how it demonstrated unique and meaningful engagement with members of the community and audiences previously, and then taken that to say, okay, and this is how this particular project will engage in a similar manner, but maybe we're looking at these aims that makes it slightly different from other unique presentations before. I think that was just the one misstep in that community engagement. It's there, and I think maybe it was, I hate to use the word assume, but I think maybe it was just assumed that that was going to come through, but had it been stated implicitly, that would have gone much further to clarify even more what community engagement looks like when you're pairing technology, imagery, and music.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead and update our scores based on our discussion. Any online comments that you want to add or subtract from? And let's go ahead and pull up the next one. I've got Paul Dittmeier as the next applicant. Just give us a moment to pull that up. All right, and I've got first reader on that one as Patrick. Patrick, have you had a chance to pull up the application?
Still working on it here, just one moment.
Yep, no problem. Takes a moment.
Okay, I'm ready. Shall we proceed?
Yep, you go right ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so for this application, I felt that the applicant did a good job of describing their current career stage. My concern, however, is that they never really tied in how this proposed project is going to specifically help them in their artistic growth. I mean, obviously, I understand that connections are going to be made at this music conference in Nashville, and that, opportunities could potentially come from that. And it also, to me, wasn't abundantly clear if he was going to be one of the performers on this showcase, or if he was just hoping that this showcase would build his capacity as an organizer of these kinds of showcases in the future. So a few of those details could have been a little bit stronger in the application, in my opinion. The quality of the artist's work is obviously there. Very strong example given that was provided, and his resume certainly supports this musical background. And let's see, moving on to the community engagement, public benefit piece. This is the section that I have the most concern for. It really wasn't made clear to me how this is going to cultivate a two-way active community engagement, either session or just how it was going to impact Indiana specifically. Again, he speaks to supporting Indiana artists, other Indiana artists in this showcase in Nashville, which is wonderful, of course. But there wasn't, in my opinion, really a piece that was identified saying, here is how this is going to benefit a specific Indiana audience and how we're going to have these kinds of community engagement activities that come out of my proposed project. So I really would have liked to have seen something there. And then lastly, as far as the feasibility is concerned, a little bit of a concern that the showcased artists themselves and the venue itself haven't been solidified in Nashville yet. I mean, I would imagine, and this is just assuming, but I would think that a lot of the venues surrounding this festival, even if they're not directly associated with the festival, are already, are getting booked at this point. So I would have liked to have seen some detail as far as some potential venues that he's looked into, or maybe some verbal commitments as far as, yes, you can have your showcase here. And I know he mentioned some criteria for identifying the artist, but there was never any conversation surrounding how he's going to get the word out, or is this just going to be within side of his circle, not circle of friends, but his own network already. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. And again, also within that feasibility, I think I saw he did provide a link to about the music festival, and inside of that link, there was information about actually being able to showcase at the festival. And I think that might have been a missed opportunity there, because that might have been, a better opportunity to engage with the people that you're going to be there already, rather than trying to invite them to something that's not necessarily a part of the festival. So yeah, those are my comments.
Great, thank you. Joshua, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just in slight contrast to Patrick, I gave this applicant the benefit of the doubt when it came to career development, maybe not necessarily as a performing artist per se, but more as a scout, a resource who has a capacity and building the capacity to become a go-to person to get bookings in and outside. So gave him the benefit of the doubt on that one, but I totally get where Patrick is coming from. Similarly, I really felt like in the budget, for me, far too much of the budget was going to things that would take place outside of the state of Indiana. And so that kind of raised a few concerns for me as far as the best use of Indiana dollars. The other part that I noted with that too is, for me, had this application said, hey, we're going to have the showcase here in an Indiana community, and based on who comes out on top from that, those are the folks who are going to this festival. For me, that would have been a stronger application that says, hey, the work is going to happen here in here in Indiana, and then we're going to take those winners elsewhere. That would have helped make that connection to Indiana audiences, Indiana platforms going outside of the state. Had that application just been flipped around just a little bit, I think it would have hit the nail on the head. I loved the musical submission, though. I really, really did. It was enjoyable. This guy and their band is crazy talented. But again, it was just that wording and just a little bit of Nashville first and then Indiana second. That kind of lost it for me just a little bit.
I'll clarify for the sake of the rest of the panelists and any other guests listening. The funds are not required to be spent in Indiana, but they do need to support the rest of the criteria. So, for example, that you have articulated some things that are happening in Indiana, the budget needs to support whatever they're proposing to do.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Does anyone else have any new, additional, or opposing comments to add?
Nick Gonzalez. I think the only thing with public benefit and community engagement that could have made it stronger, I do agree that it was a little wordy but also I think it was a little generalized, like just talking about the benefit of music and roots music. That's all nice to hear, but we want to, at least I was looking for how this project actually does those generalized things that they were talking about. And I think that would have taken it to the next step.
Agreed.
Okay. Anyone else?
No, I mean, I agree. I might just state it a little bit more strongly. I saw little to no community engagement or public benefit here. I just flatly didn't see any. I think it's regardless of whether the applicant is a performer or an organizer, so that fact was unclear. The fact that there was no clear plan for engagement before the Nashville event or after. I just didn't see it. So I was left wanting more.
Okay.
I'll add just a bit to that. I also had the same concern and sort of went back over the guidelines and to review that information on how it could impact Indiana. I think that whether or not the artist performs in Indiana or outside Indiana, I think that whatever they bring back can be impactful. And I think that is part of that piece. I think the artist has a really strong voice and a strong platform from which to project. But I will agree with you that there was no specific audience identified here in Indiana. I'm not saying that there can't be by sending them out, by having them perform out of state and then come back with those conversations. But I guess I wanted more specific stuff there.
Okay. I think that seems thorough. Let's go ahead and update our scores and our online comments, please. And once you complete that, I'd like to invite you to open the next application. Pope Adrian bless.
You guys are doing an excellent job. Is everyone okay? Does anyone need a break, or can we keep powering through?
I say let's keep moving.
Let's roll.
Thank you.
All right. I've had a chance to pull mine up and hoping you guys have too. Let's go ahead, and it looks like I've got for first reader, Nick Blanford. Nick, have you had a chance to get it pulled up?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna let you.
Yeah, so I thought all of the previous work was really strong. I think the thing that I really struggled with here is that the application really seemed to hinge on this trip to South by Southwest. And that's where the bulk of the expenses were directed. And then the plan was to return to Indiana and host ciphers and writing workshops and things like that. And I actually really wish that would have been the focus of the application. I think going to South by Southwest, I can see in theory where that's a strong opportunity for career development, but I did not see a plan here. And I think the problem here is that something like South by Southwest is such a sprawling event. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of artists that show up every year hoping to network. And if you don't have a plan for where you're going to go, what panels you're going to go to, who you're going to reach out to, it's very easy to go and accomplish nothing other than hanging out in Austin for a few days. And so I think that lack of detail gave me a lot of pause about the feasibility of achieving the career development goals. And then that made it unclear how that would actually serve I think the more attractive goals of hosting the ciphers and coming back and serving as a mentor and sort of a career coach of sorts to other artists in the community. And so I kind of felt caught in between two ideas, one that felt not very strongly supported and that didn't really elevate the other. I think that if the applicant had focused a little bit more on, the community engagement and the activities there, and how the funding and their efforts would really drive towards that. I think that would have strengthened the application.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Philip, I've got you down for second reader. Are you prepared?
Yes. I will agree with that. I think it would be very helpful to have a more clear schedule for, who you're going to try to interact with, maybe reach out ahead of time at South by Southwest, which is very sprawling, and try to hopefully set up those, I guess, give description of how you're going to set up those contacts beforehand. Obviously, you can make contacts there. I think that it would be helpful to have more of a clear plan. The additional piece I would give is the community events were described as ciphers, and I think that it's a great goal to invite other people to that. It's very beneficial to the public. It's very beneficial to the artists to have those conversations. I think that knowing when and where those might occur, I didn't see dates, and I'll have to review and see if that's a correct statement. Wanting to host the ciphers, I think, are great, and rap battles, it's obviously really great training for the artist. I think that the one concern I had there was where that's going to happen and how that can fit within the budget, because I think that hosting an event like that where you're inviting, it says 50 to 100 people, not a massive crowd, but for that crowd of that size, I think that you need to identify where that's going to happen and what costs are involved there, especially reaching out to places ahead of time, especially when writing the application. You can have some costs identified in there. That'd be helpful to know, so that I see that more specific thought directed towards how those community events will be conducted and achieved. So that's the only other piece. I think the quality of the work was there, and the application was otherwise good. I just wanted more specific outline on when and where those community events would take place.
Okay, thanks, Philip. Are there any new, additional, or opposing comments?
Yes. So just to piggyback on that, I think, he states $200 for materials and supplies in his budget for the workshop materials. I would have liked that a little bit more further explained, just so that we could know what is that going towards, and how is that going to support the community engagement piece. Examples such as that would have made the application a little bit stronger.
Anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead and update our scores and our online comments based on our discussion today. And then let's pull up the next one. I have Timothy Moore. Give you just a moment to complete the previous one. All right. Everybody get a chance to do that? Mm-hmm. All right. Joshua, I've got you down as first reader for Timothy. Have you had a chance to bring up the application?
Yes.
All right. Go right ahead.
All right. So what I liked about this one is the ample background of the applicant's career thus far, clearly articulating that the funds are going to help with the development with the skills as a producer, not a performer. So I think that was nice to distinguish between the two. I'll be the first to admit I know little to nothing about production and, and all that stuff. So, but what I also liked is applicant has already kind of reached out to radio affiliates when it comes to that that CD release event that he's going to do. So that's wide dissemination, but also very targeted for that local community, that local group. So I did enjoy that. The only critique that I have, and again, it's based off of my lack of knowledge of how production actually works. I enjoyed the submission very much. Since this was focused on developing his production skills, for me personally, I would have maybe liked for the submission to have been a pre-mixed, a pre-mastered version of this upcoming CD release. That way the individual could actually speak specifically to what elements of production he's working on for the folks who don't know what it is. But other than that, I thought it was a fairly strong application.
Great, thank you, Joshua. Patrick, I have you as second reader. Are you ready?
I am. Yeah, so I'll just jump right into the feasibility section. I think I could have used a lot greater detail and or explanation of the budget, as well as the timeline. It just left a lot to be desired, in my opinion. So, you know, the applicant could have been a little bit more specific with those items for my taste. And then also, I think Joshua talked about his goal, and you know, he does clearly state that he wants this to benefit more of his production side of his career. And I think for me, he could have elaborated a little bit more on that, just so that he could have just been a little bit more descriptive there in that section as well. I did also have some concerns with the community engagement section. I was just a little maybe confused as to how, you know, as far as some of the details surrounding that community engagement piece, I would have liked to have seen those a little bit more fleshed out as well. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any new, additional, or opposing comments?
Gonzalez. I think my main criticism, so to help the application, would just be their submission of the work. I believe they only submitted a video, and I believe it was since it was longer than 5 minutes. I think it was just a hair over, but to make it, I was just a little unclear of, like, since the video production was just their group and not so much focused on him as the artist, or really kind of how it relates to the goal. I think it was more of the music that they wanted us to listen to, but I just felt like the submission of the work could have been more clearly related to the project.
Okay, anyone else? All right. Hearing none, let's go ahead and update our scores and comments based on the discussion we've had. And then let's go ahead and pull up the next one. I have Victoria Griswold as our next applicant. Let's get the application pulled up.
I'd like to finalize comments from the previous application first.
Oh, sure. No problem. Just let me know when you're done.
Okay, I have this artist's application pulled up.
All right, go ahead.
I think this artist's application on writing and including specific works for children was very clearly outlined. I thought it was a very strong application, especially with creating new programs that have a direct community engagement. And I think that part is also very clearly impactful for the artist. So, you know, I think with previous work having success with not just with the artist's own craft, but also with previous engagements, I think that this, you know, furthering that work is very commendable, and I think very part of what I hope that the commission, the Arts Commission, is all about, is continuing that impactful work. So in this application, I think it was detailed with what the work was, how it will be performed, where it will be performed, and how it will be presented, as well as the conversation that will take place, especially on children, which, you know, any art that can be, how it was described, how it would impact children, I think was very clear. So I don't think I can add more to that, because all of my other comments are related to how it impacts children and, you know, the hands-on experience. So I thought the application was very strong. The quality of the work, especially with the musical piece that was presented in chart form, I think was good. I think the quality was there, and I think the impact is there on the public. That's it.
Thank you, Philip. Nick Blanford, I have you down for second reader.
Yeah, I thought it was an excellent application. I think the only bit of constructive feedback I provide is since the example of previous work, it spoke more, that provided more demonstration of the artist's experience as a writer. And since their stated career goals were twofold, both writing for children and composition arranging skills, you know, it would have been nice to have a previous example that also demonstrated the current composition and arranging skills, or, you know, if there's an audio or video example of previous performances. But I think all in all, the resume is so strong, and, you know, that there's collaboration, you know, references with Indianapolis Public Libraries and Symphony Orchestra. You know, those typically aren't organizations that you get invited to work with again if your work was poor. So I have a lot of faith in the applicant. That's just the one area where I would have liked a little bit more detail, but I thought it was excellent.
Thank you, Nick. Do we have any new, additional, or opposing comments?
For me, definitely everything what everyone said. I thought this was an outstanding application. What I really appreciated was the budget and how the majority of the funds in this application were earmarked for the writing, the editing, and not the paying of the musicians. I mean, this applicant already created established relationships where a bulk of those expenses, paying for musicians or venue rental, was already taken care of because previous quality and work wanted her back for this. And so she's able to use these funds and maximize the use of the funds for their career development as someone who creates this type of work for kids. So I thought that was just really, really strong, super important in saying this person is actually going to maximize the full extent of this monies for what they're intended for. So I really appreciated that.
Good. Anyone else have anything to add? Okay, let's take a moment and update our scores. Add any comments?
Just a heads up, Patrick is going to call in.
Okay. And the next one, once you get that complete, is William Clark, but please take your time. All right. Everybody have a chance to complete your comments?
If we could just give Patrick just a couple more seconds.
Sure, yeah, sorry. Did I lose him?
Hey, Patrick, we got you.
Hey, sorry. My goodness.
No worries. Thanks for being nimble.
All right. Are we ready? William Clark is our next applicant. And our first reader on that is Nick Gonzalez. Nick, do you have it pulled up ready to go?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right, go for it.
So I thought the display of what the artists, where they're currently at, and some of their previous work was pretty strong. That he gave us a clear list of things he's done in the past. My two main areas of concern were the feasibility and the community engagement and public benefit part. Specifically with that, I didn't really see how this goes to benefit Indiana artists. I think their only like public benefit part was just the spreading of it digitally with live shows, but there was no indication of like where those live shows would take place. The person mentioned places they performed in the past, but I don't know if if this new music will go to those same places or different places, or even if they're in Indiana. With the feasibility, I didn't really see a timeline. Instead, I kind of just saw a thought process. So I understand the artist creed said that there's 5 stages to production, but would be really helpful if producing will be done by May, writing will be done by June, that sort of stuff. Because I'm worried with that lack of clarity that the project will not get finished by a certain time. So I think those are my big areas of concern. And also with the submission of the artist documentation, I wasn't quite sure that that was the best use of explaining this next project. Like I think more of a plan for this future album as opposed to showcasing just the previous link to their previous song would have been better over that.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. Patrick, we still have you? Are you ready for the second reader?
Yes. Can everyone hear me okay on this new line?
Sure can.
Okay. Yeah, so for me, a couple of points I'd like to make is an area of concern just under the area of impact on the artist's career development. For me, I really didn't see the applicant make a strong connection as to how this is going to uniquely impact his either artistic and or other areas of his career. So I would have liked to have seen, a stronger connection made to how this is going to this project specifically that he's proposing is going to benefit his artistic career. And then secondly, another area of concern for me was just the community engagement piece. You know, I didn't see a specific activity identified, or, you know, I think just some greater details there, or greater thought as well behind the community engagement portion of the proposed project would have been appreciated. And then again, under feasibility, you know, the budget to me looks relatively arbitrary, you know, and the budget explanation section really didn't expound upon what he had listed in the budget to, you know, more fully answer my questions surrounding it. So I just would have appreciated a little bit greater level of detail, I think, throughout, but specifically for those sections that I mentioned.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Do we have any new, additional, or opposing comments to add?
I'd like to add one thing to continue with Patrick's statement about the, that was Patrick, yeah, Patrick's statement about the budget. My one comment there was that most of the funds are tied up in the PR of the project and not in the production of the actual work. And I think if that were reversed, it would make, you know, would help me be more confident that, you know, the goals that the artist hopes to achieve would be reached in producing the new work, and not just in the marketing of it. The marketing is important, but I think that more of the focus on the initial line item of acoustic treatment, paying musicians and getting software, you know, is all involved in the production of the work. I think should maybe be more of a focus of the project, and then the PR after that. I think there's too much focus on the PR and not production of the work.
Anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll chime in. That honestly didn't bother me. I thought the level of detail in the budget was sufficient. And, you know, I would say that, you know, as far as career development, I think simply an artist completing a new album, which, you know, generally represents a significant next chapter in their career. You know, it's like publishing a book or having a big gallery show. You know, it's the next big step for them. I think just the realization of that is sufficient to me. And, you know, part of maximizing the impact on the career is a promotion of it. You know, I think that it's not unusual for, you know, marketing and promotion expenses to match or exceed that of production. So that element just didn't really bother me. You know, I think you know, my primary critique, or sort of suggestion would be focusing more on the public benefit and community engagement. You know, I think that where they did hit on that successfully was the mention that the live performances would include the collaborators from the recordings. So it does involve a larger artist community, but, you know, beyond performing for an audience, you know, I think there is sort of a ceiling on the ability for the community to engage. But I thought the quality of work and all that was strong. Just a bit more detail, like others mentioned.
Thank you, Nick. Anyone else? Okay. Let's go ahead and update our scores and comments on William Clark's application. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and pull up the next one, which is, I'm so sorry, Yelena Polyanskaya application. All right, has everybody had a chance to update scores and pull it up?
Mhm.
Okay, great. And Joshua, I've got you down as first reader. Go ahead.
All right. I thought this was a very, very strong application. Every single category was linked together, and so the concept was held together pretty well. And I thought it was very creative. So let me see. I'm trying to pull up some of my notes I have for this one here. I thought the applicant did a really good job of explaining the concept and the methodology she used for this project, kind of mixing music with the technologies and the evolution of music technologies and why that's important. I thought was very nice. The community engagement piece, I think, is taken care of nicely. My only constructive thing would have been, if you're casting such a wide net for your audience, kind of subdivide each of those demographics and what about this project specifically speaks to the aging and the elderly, to, I don't know, jazz aficionados or to children or something like that. The budget seemed and the timeline seemed feasible and plausible, and the submission and documentation of the work was absolutely outstanding. So that's about it for me.
Thanks, Joshua. Nick Gonzalez, I've got you down as second reader. Are you ready?
Yep. So I agree a lot with what was said earlier. I think it's a really strong application. I think my only two notes that could make it just even more stronger was in their artist documentation. They talked a little about that they have experience or they're taking classes in like writing and directing, but that wasn't really put in the resume or the other parts. Like, I think that's really important, and the artist could have put it there just to make it a little more better. And then I just agree a lot. I just agree with the community engagement part. I thought it was really good, but defining how you're going to interact with each audience. But that being said, it was still a really good application.
Thank you, Nick. Do we have any new, additional, or opposing comments?
Yeah, I actually felt pretty differently about the community engagement. I thought the public benefit was clear, but I didn't really see much engagement at all. It seemed that the public participation the plan for that was limited to delivering download codes to various organizations and locations, which seems to then put a heavy burden on those organizations to choose to engage or not. There's no, it was unclear whether there were really any plans for a live performance or any actual like two-way engagement. So I don't know. I'm curious if anyone can convince me, but I thought that was pretty lacking, to be honest.
Anyone have thoughts to add to that?
I see what you're saying. I was just thinking, if the applicant were to go and plan or not, have a specific purpose for each identified, target group, whether it be a live performance or engagement. I think that would help clarify and make a little bit more clear where the public benefit of it comes from. Like, it's one thing to engage, but how do we know that engagement is beneficial? I think it gets back to measurable. So to your point, I agree. I think that can be accomplished by getting more specific with why she's targeting who for this. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think maybe just to clarify my thoughts, I can see the public benefit if people engage with it. What I was missing was the engagement. I feel like the plan was basically limited to, here are these recordings, and if people hear them, yeah, that's great benefit. But just like dropping off download cards, like, it's unclear. It's like, are there specific contacts? Is it being worked into programming, or is the applicant just dropping off cards at like the front desk? And then does it just go into like a stack of flyers, and like incoming mail? It felt just sort of like a delivery to a potential audience without really engaging that audience or having like a clear pathway to make them an active audience.
Anyone else want to add to that? It's good discussion. Go ahead and update your scores or your online comments based on our conversation here. And that was our final application today. So this will conclude the Individual Advancement Program, fiscal year 20, Music 2 Advisory Review Panel. I'd like to thank everyone for their time and service and the really great discussion we've had today. Thank you.